reducing the difference between your title and what you can actually do. That was my journey. In the first year, I could tell there are things that I had grasped. There are things that I could do, which give me confidence. In my second year, in my career, more exposure and a very rewarding and encouraging environment that encouraged us to learn and ask questions, even dumb questions, which I have been very privileged to be in such a very good and supportive environment. And we get to talk about this as we continue, because it does shape your career, the environment that you're working with, who are your leaders, your bosses, because they will make or break your career. My journey in cyber has rather been an interesting one. And I would say for somebody who's starting a career, we sort of start with some fundamentals, especially in the area of tech. And there are certain fundamentals that are required as you're starting your careers. When I started this journey back in 2014, I did not have these fundamentals. I remember my mentor, my technology mentor, who was my interviewer then, asked me a very basic question, which is, what is a ping command? I could not answer that question. And I want to encourage everyone, if you are starting your tech journey and you think that you're so green, please, I was worse than you. So when I started that journey, it was a journey of learning and getting to know how much information I did not know and how much knowledge I needed to acquire, which I consider important as you're starting your journey in tech, or in any other field, because it's important for you to identify and be honest with yourself on what do I know and what are the things I need to learn. Write them down, do your stock taking of your skills if possible. If you find that they are nothing, or rather the skills that you have are very little, that's okay, because that will be your starting point. So that's where my journey started with looking at my peers, my colleagues, and getting to really admire the amount of knowledge that they had, and asking a lot of questions. And that, I think, is how you start your journey of growth and development. So when I started that journey then, it was through learning and getting to ask a lot of questions and getting to getting exposure to a lot of new concepts and new ideas. When you're starting your career, it comes with different milestones. There are different phases of career development. And one of it, your 1 to 2 years of your career will be you trying to find your ground. You trying to find, okay, a programmer, a developer, you're a software engineer, that's a line that you want to take. It's going to take some time to get to the person that you envision in your career path, but you need to start from somewhere. And that was my journey. Within the first year, I could now begin, I could tell that there are things that I could understand, speak confidently, do them as well, because at the end of the day, you need to have things that you can do, and match the things that you are saying. When you have a title that you've been given at work, you need to begin reducing the difference between your title and what you can actually do. That was my journey. In the first year, I could tell there are things that I had grasped. There are things that I could do, which give me confidence. In my second year, in my career, more exposure and a very rewarding and encouraging environment that encouraged us to learn and ask questions, even dumb questions, which I have been very privileged to be in such a very good and supportive environment. And we get to talk about this as we continue, because it does shape your career, the environment that you're working with, who are your leaders, your bosses, because they will make or break your career. My journey in cyber has rather been an interesting one. And I would say for somebody who's starting a career, we sort of start with some fundamentals, especially in the area of tech. And there are certain fundamentals that are required as you're starting your careers. When I started this journey back in 2014, I did not have these fundamentals. I remember my mentor, my technology mentor, who was my interviewer then, asked me a very basic question, which is, what is a ping command? I could not answer that question. And I want to encourage everyone, if you are starting your tech journey and you think that you're so green, please, I was worse than you. So when I started that journey, it was a journey of learning and getting to know how much information I did not know and how much knowledge I needed to acquire, which I consider important as you're starting your journey in tech or in any other field, because it's important for you to identify and be honest with yourself on what do I know and what are the things I need to learn. Write them down, do your stock taking of your skills if possible. If you find that they are nothing, or rather the skills that you have are very little, that's okay, because that would be your starting point. So that's where my journey started. Started with looking at my peers, my colleagues, and getting to really admire the amount of knowledge that they had, and asking a lot of questions. And that, I think, is how you start your journey of growth and development. So when I started that journey then, it was through learning and getting to ask a lot of questions and getting to getting exposure to a lot of new concepts and new ideas. When you're starting your career, it comes with different milestones. There are different phases of career development. And one of it, your 1 to 2 years of your career will be you trying to find your ground. You trying to find, okay, a programmer, a developer, you're a software engineer, that's a line that you want to take. It's going to take some time to get to the person that you envision in your career path, but you need to start from somewhere. And that was my journey. Within the first year, I could now begin, I could tell that there are things that I could understand, speak confidently, do them as well, because at the end of the day, you need to have things that you can do, and match the things that you are saying. When you have a title that you've been given at work, you need to begin reducing the difference between your title and what you can actually do. That was my journey. In the first year, I could tell there are things that I had grasped. There are things that I could do, which give me confidence. In my second year, in my career, more exposure and a very rewarding and encouraging environment that encouraged us to learn and ask questions, even dumb questions, which I have been very privileged to be in such a very good and supportive environment. And we get to talk about this as we continue, because it does shape your career, the environment that you're working with, who are your leaders, your bosses, because they will make or break your career.
Good evening to us all. I want to welcome everyone who has joined us this evening. We are all ready to start. Our expert is in the room, and I'm seeing a lot of friends, colleagues. I want to really appreciate you making time to join us this evening. Besides your busy schedule, we are excited to be focusing today on securing cloud services, APIs, microservices. And with us is Ayub Mwangi, who is a friend and someone we've worked with for quite some time. And so I am excited to have Ayub join us today. And Ayub, you're most welcome. For those of you who are joining in for the first time, this is a webinar that we host every month. And it's around this time that we host these webinars to help those of us who are starting our journeys in cybersecurity familiarize ourselves, have a soft landing if you were in school or you're even currently in school and you're not very sure the path that you should take in cybersecurity. This is a good forum for you to join and meet like-minded people. You'll meet experts in these areas who are already pursuing areas in the field that you want to pursue. And it becomes a good area for us to interact, share ideas, hear from experts who've been doing this for quite some time. A shout out to some of my colleagues and former colleagues. I see one Mr. Boniface. A shout out to you, Boniface. I also see one of my colleagues, Andrew, is in the room also. Most welcome. I also see Velma, Catherine, Peter. Very glad to see you all. Anthony, thank you for joining us this evening. Very glad to see you all join us. And Ayub, I want us to start our conversation today. It's going to be packed. We're going to have around 40-45 minutes of talking on matters cloud. And it's very exciting. Ayub, most welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you. First of all, confirm that you can hear me properly, Mr. Martin.
Good, good. I think if you can raise your voice a bit, we can hear you, but we want a bit of the oomph, the energy.
What about now?
Yes, loud and clear.
Perfect, perfect, perfect.
Good, good.
Yeah.
How are you doing today?
Doing good, thank you. Typical day, but of course exciting because of this session. Looking forward to having an interesting session. Looking at this topic of APIs, cloud, and microservices.
Awesome.
And of course, how they are interrelated. Basically, I like to think of them as an ecosystem. So one is interdependent with the other. So it's therefore an ecosystem, and therefore, if it's an ecosystem, it has taken a journey from back then till now, and as well, security has grown in tandem, and so that's what I'm really looking forward to. Having that. Yes.
Good, good. Thank you, Ayub. Just for us to appreciate Ayub, I know those of us who are pursuing careers in cybersecurity take different journeys. There are those of us who cybersecurity as a career and as a path we want to pursue was very clear when we were in school. Some of us, it was by chance, it was randomly. Some of us, it's because we attended a conference. Some of us, because we attended a forum like this and listened to you talk about this thing. This topic. Please just help us appreciate what has been your background and your journey. Just very briefly for those of us who are joining in and hearing you for the first time.
Okay. Maybe the first time I stumbled with this concept of cybersecurity, of course, like many, and I suspect I won't be the only one, is through TV, through series. There was a series called Person of Interest.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this lady called Ruth. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It was for me that was interesting. I was like, okay, this is what I want. And mind you, the time I was watching that, I was in a completely different background. I was basically doing engineering, telecommunication, and electric and electronics engineering.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am, doing a lot of mathematics, deriving a lot of formulas, a lot of complex formulas, which actually is a journey that a couple of my friends have taken. Started there, but yeah. So the very first time I was dealing with cybersecurity is towards.
I'm sorry about that. I think you are muted.
Okay. So I'm saying I interacted with security probably towards the end of my campus days. That's when my interest grew. So basically from there, my first internship went to a telecommunications company. And the highlight of it was I was running fiber cables, fiber optics, fixing internet, opening manholes, getting into ceilings, doing a lot of cabling.
Interesting.
And then I graduated to NOC, basically monitoring networks. And then I got into security. And then that's a point at which I got into security. Probably, started off within SOC. So that laid a very good background for, understanding the attacker, right? So because at SOC, you're basically looking, you have these technologies that are meant to, to collect events that will help you detect when an attack is going on. And basically from there, I was able to learn a lot of tactics. So then shifted on to doing penetration testing, managing infrastructure within security, progressed to done a couple of red teaming exercises. But the one thing I'm always struggling is how do you innovate within this space of security? How do you innovate within cybersecurity? So I started off getting into a bit of dev, taking concepts to do with DevOps, and here I am. So what I've come to learn after all that journey, networks, dev, security, infrastructure, is that slowly I was creating dots.
All right.
And it's with only time, and like they say, you can't connect dots looking forward. You have to look backwards. So even amongst the people who are joining, you might be doing things and wondering, where is this taking me? In the future, probably that could connect. A lot of things are converging, and therefore it is not in vain. So that's how I would sum up my journey. Currently, I work as a senior application security engineer within one of the financial organizations here in Nairobi.
All right. So and for those of us who are joining in, we're just introducing our session this evening and excited to have you join us. Ayub, back to your introduction and your journey. You're telling us there's a time that you are running cables. You are a networking guy.
Yes.
All right. Again, you tell us there's a time that you are a security operations center analyst. You're on the defense side of things.
Correct.
All right. There is also a time that you, again, decided to explore the penetration side of things, the offensive.
Yes. Offensive is the normal pen test and towards red teaming.
Towards red teaming. All right. And I know as we've talked with you before, you have a very interesting concept of connecting the dots, where sometimes you might not be sure of what am I doing now and how does it connect to the future version of what I intend to do. Maybe somebody wants to become a pen tester, but right now they're in a somewhat complete different domain in their cybersecurity of IT career. And I think from what you're saying is that part of what we are doing now, we need to begin seeing it as, in a way, it's connecting us to a future version of us. But I want to take you back, Ayub, to some that you've shared with me before, which was interesting. When you walked in to your, when you went back to your campus days, you told me that you walked into the room and you found one of your roommates had a computer and he had a black screen. Please tell us that story. It was quite intriguing and into how it sparked your cybersecurity journey.
So you need to understand that probably the very first I was interacting with computers is after Form 4. So yeah, I'm not that young. And basically the typical you finish Form 4, you go do a computer packages course, you're playing around with Excel, Word, and then I go to campus. Day one, I happened to go to where I was sleeping. We were sleeping in a dormitory, so we were sharing a room with a friend of mine called Newton. So that is day one. After he's finished packing, I see he has this big monitor. These big monitors, the ones that are they're called what, CRTs. And then he switches it on. Me, I'm waiting for Windows to load up. I see something called Ubuntu. I'm like, okay, these are the guys I was told you should never be like them. And then as soon as he logs in, he goes into the terminal. I don't know what he's doing, but I was amazed. I was like, okay. I thought I knew. I thought by the time I was coming here, I know my way around computers. So it's those old computers, and I remember probably the electricals of the house were not being properly done. So once you turn it off, turn it on, it draws a lot of current, and the room used to dim a little bit as it was coming up. So I thought, oh, this was cool. And I think the very first time I saw that terminal, I was like, okay. So probably there is more to engineering than I've been led to believe. And I'm sure then once I bought my computer, the next thing I did, is to install that OS, just to experience that feeling of, because it felt powerful. You could do a lot of things. You could manipulate a lot of things. You didn't feel like you are bound to the normal. So actually, it's good you're reminding me that story, because it actually plays a lot in my. I think it is at that point I realized, engineering, it's not everything. It's good, but I need to start thinking more. There's more to this. There's more to this.
All right. So you're doing a telecommunications engineering course.
Yeah, correct.
You started day one. You've met one of your roommates. He's running Ubuntu, black screen. It's different from Windows. It gives you a spark and sort of gives you an interest in Linux, and the rest is history. Flash forward,
Yeah.
you start your first job, and
Yes.
I bring this up because there is an element of innovation that I think I like in what you do. You'll pick a project, you'll do something, whether it's personal, whether it's at work, and you always looking to innovate. How can I do it differently? And I don't know if you're okay sharing that with us. What are some of the things that you found as problems and challenges? And in those initial days, you tried innovating them and using your Linux and scripting language back in school to change how things were done.
So maybe I can give a bit of context to it. So by the time I was getting into security, I was within a NOC. So within this NOC, we had an old way of monitoring. So you have screen.
And I know for those of us who might not understand what this is, a network operations center.
Okay. So a NOC is a network operation center. So we used to monitor a lot of, basically there were a lot of graphs that we were monitoring. And basically you would have page 1 of 10. Each page it's paginated. Each page has 20 or so graphs. Click next, monitor. What we are doing monitoring is network traffic. We are monitoring, how power is being fed to the network nodes. So it was very tiresome. So at that point, I started thinking, okay, how can I automate my way around this? So what you notice is even towards today, automation has been my thing, if I can say it so. So I started automating a lot of tasks that I thought were repetitive. For instance, we kept logging into routers. I thought, okay, how can I automate that? How can I automate fetching some data? And back then I was only armed with a little bit of bash scripting, a little bit of Python, and probably a little bit of PHP back then. Old way of writing code, but it was working. So now I switched to security. Security initially, joining in within SOC and then joining in within doing penetration testing. My thinking has always been how can I do things differently? And for once, I was confronted by the fact that probably you can't. There's a methodology to it. So there's a methodology that we stick to. You're doing penetration testing. There are phases to. So there are phases to penetration testing. Follow step 1, 2, 3, 4. There's black box. There's white box. Within white box, you're supposed to go look at databases. You're supposed to go look at network. You look at servers. So there was that. There was that methodology. And then of course over time you do one project, you do another. Everything's becomes repetitive. So my biggest frustration was that literally there's I can't automate a lot of things. That was my mindset and my thinking back then. But then they call it penetration testing for a reason. So there's that which you can do manually. There's that which you can do. There's that which you can there's that which is automated. So initially, as I was starting, that was my biggest dilemma. My biggest frustration is that I don't have an outlet to innovate. So it's sort of a niche, and I'm sure each and every one of us has a way of scratching that itch within that which you're doing. So
so you say you are in a NOC, and part
yes.
of the way the NOC operates is you have to log into, say, a router, check in some metrics, and then you know what is the current status. And based on the background that you had on your Linux back in campus, you are able to automate that process.
Yes.
Awesome. So when you look back to your days in campus, it's been sort of a mix of very rich networking background, I would say, very rich Linux background. Is this something that you recommend to anyone who is pursuing a career in cybersecurity? And which focus areas require those types of skills if somebody is pursuing a cybersecurity career path?
I'd say for a person who is starting, if you can't start, have a broad base, right? You don't have to master everything. Remember, this is a very broad base. You don't have to master everything, but understand the core concepts. I think the basics never change. Even when you're confronted by something, a complex situation, the basics never really change. So, okay, within that broad base, could be the networking. You need to understand the core concepts. The core concept of routing, static routing. You need to understand what is switching, gateways, because you realize that in security, nothing operates in isolation. So it's an ecosystem. And this broad base is, if you have an understanding, some understanding of networking, you have some understanding of operating system. You have some understanding of a bit of dev. You don't have to really master, but there are those core concepts. There are those principles. There are those principles that traverse technologies, that will traverse the infrastructure. Those are what you concentrate on. And then as you with time, like even you've mentioned, right now, mostly in applications, are mostly now currently focusing on securing life cycles. So that's very specific, but it has taken, there's a journey to it. So that broad base you've built on it. But the beauty of making sure that you're covering your that broad base, you're going for the core concept that they don't change. It could be on cloud, could be on premise. It doesn't change, right? So those core concepts, they never change. Yeah, that's how I would put it. Yeah.
Very interesting that you bring that up, Ayub. So you advocate for rather understanding the fundamentals, and you say there are fundamental principles in every cybersecurity domain or path that we want to pursue. Which I assume you're alluding to the fact that if you say I'm going to become a penetration tester, or I want to become a cloud security specialist, I should rather not focus first on the security part, but I should understand the fundamentals of cloud. Or if I'm going to become a network penetration tester, I should rather understand the fundamentals of a network.
Correct. That is correct.
And I would like you to help us understand. You have a very interesting way of learning and acquiring knowledge because we've talked with you on this before. And I would like for you to just help us appreciate. We are done with this webinar/podcast, and Ayub has told us that we need to go deep, look for some depth in DNS, look for some depth in OSI models. You have a very interesting way of acquiring knowledge where you say that you should pick one thing and run with it for, say, a week, or if it's 2 weeks. Please talk to us some more about that so that it helps us know how and where to start moving forward.
Okay. So there's a sort of a story to it. So by the time I was joining my first organization, I came across the CTO, a very interesting person, very detailed. So and I was like, this guy is so good. How do you? And asked him, you seem to know a lot of things. So complex. You've been confronted by these complex issues. How do you learn these things? And I could see that he's able to break them elegantly in a way that mesmerized me. So I asked him, how do you learn? And he told me that I pick one item and one item only, and then I studied for a long period of time. So you've given the DNS example. So even with that DNS, he'll go into so if let's say I'm reading about DNS, I'll give it a week. So I know that it doesn't sound interesting, but once you start consuming, that information at that depth, so you have sort of you start connecting concepts, and that's why I go for give me a new concept. I'll say this week I'll be looking at DNS. This week I'll be looking at HTTP. This week I could be looking at emails. So with emails, I'll break it down to the infrastructure bit, to the protocols, to the technologies, what kind of technologies are there. And then probably as I'm diving deep in, I'll also look into this technology, how is it being misused? What are the defensive technologies to it? So it is taking a concept, could be a topic, and then you're saying, this week, I'm looking at this topic. So that's what works for me.
I see. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Very interesting. And Ayub, I want us to switch gears. And for those of us who are just joining in, very interesting conversations here with one Mr. Ayub Mwangi. I do consider Ayub as an expert in his right. He's walked us through his journey, very rich understanding and background across. He really emphasizes on us building fundamentals. If you're saying you want to become a cybersecurity expert in the near future, or that's what you're working on, part of what Ayub tells us is pick an area and understand what you want to secure, what you want to break. Ayub, we have had a trend of cloud APIs, microservices, DevSecOps, DevOps. We're actually confused, Ayub. What do these terms mean? What is cloud? What is the difference between cloud API microservices? I think I would want us to start there. If you could help us understand what do those terms mean, and as you do that, if you can also help us appreciate where did we get here? Just recently, when did we begin hearing about APIs, microservices? What are these? And how have we gotten here? Please, Ayub, help us understand.
Okay, sure thing. So I'm sure almost all of us, you must have heard of either API, you must have heard of cloud, and probably those of you also must have heard of cloud native microservices. You've heard of CI/CD. You've heard of DevOps. So I'll start off with giving context, so that it becomes relatable. And as I give that context, the definition of what that is will be evident. So let's go back to those early stages of internet back in 2000s. How are people creating applications? How are organizations building their softwares? So we'll start off with back then. So you had people building things on premise. So within an office, there was some room somewhere, or probably there was a cabinet somewhere, and there was a server there, and that server is connected to internet, and then you had developers building on it. So that is what I'll be calling on-premise. And how did they used to build? So you had your developers, and then you had the people who used to look at the infrastructure, call them the IT people. And then you also need to understand how are these developers building their applications, which brings us to the first concept of what I'll call, quote unquote, what I'll call monolithic applications. So don't be afraid of the term. So monolithic is you're basically building everything. If let's say you are building a web application, so within that same server you have your database, your logic, your data layer there. You have your front end, you have your back end, all there. So it's all within that box there. So
and you said, sorry to cut you short, you said the characteristic of back when you're building monolithic applications,
yes,
the deployment was on premise.
Was at the start, at the beginning, it was on premise.
I see.
Yes, and now let's bring in the aspect of security. So what were the security considerations within this on-premise? You building an all-in-one application. So what that meant is back then you were all concerned. Your biggest concern was that physically, is my data center secure? Or probably where I've stored that server, is it secure? And then from the application level, your biggest consideration was, how does my perimeter look like? How does my perimeter look like? And that's why at the onset, the most popular thing, the most security tool, or probably the tool that was there was the perimeter firewall.
Ah,
So
I see.
it was just to address that, yeah, I just have this box, and all I'm afraid about is securing my perimeter.
Okay,
And
because
that's, yes.
if I bypass your perimeter, I will access your monolithic application that is all embedded together with your database.
Yes.
I
So
see. Okay.
a lot of focus was then going to securing securing that perimeter.
All right. Okay. So
Yeah.
we are monolithic. That's a new term. Monolithic. It's actually a term. Eh?
Yes.
We are past monolithic. We are building applications. Its on-premise characteristic is that we are bundling everything together. What's
Correct.
next after that?
So what came next is that internet was evolving, and businesses were realizing that okay, I need to serve the internet. Remember, we are all talking about globalization. So you now start thinking that okay, this server here was serving us internally, and probably the only thing that was exposed probably was the website, and probably the mail server. But now we need to expose our e-commerce. With people are starting to innovate. People are starting to take advantage of the globalization. They are realizing, okay, we need to this amazing value that we do have internally. We need to project it to the world, right? So that was the next trend that came, and then came the concept of web-based applications. But even before, let me take you back. So within that monolithic, so what were the issues? What were the challenges with that? So as now we are progressing to wanting to expose, value to the world, complexity increases. So your code base increases, probably you're serving the whole world. Your database also increases, your requirement increases, and probably the kind of traffic that is hitting you increases. So there was a bit of rigidity with the old way of building and deploying applications. So that is the next step within that evolution.
Okay. So the internet changes. Business is now demanding for scaling, and scaling in the way in the amount of traffic, the speed as well, and how fast responses to clients need to be served back. So what happens at that point in terms of architectures and how we are building and deploying applications?
Okay. I'll go with the bearing of security into this. At that point is when we had so initially it was that perimeter firewall, but since now we focusing more on applications, you had WAFs, web application firewalls.
I see. Okay.
Because you've exposed the application, the attackers have realized, okay, I can attack this application by SQL injection, probably by other sort of kind of attacks. And probably they've realized that, okay, I can as well intercept this traffic, and that brought also things to do with HTTPS, SSL. That became common. And how did that look from an infrastructure point of view? Remember, you've exposed the service to globally. It means that it becomes now harder to predict the kind of resources that you need for your application to run. So there comes a need to be able to scale horizontally and vertically.
And by scaling horizontally and vertically, what does that mean?
So remember, once you're interacting with an application, it translates to a cost in terms of consumption of a resource. So every time you load, there's a request response kind of a mechanism. And a server, it takes power, it takes memory, it takes it takes memory, it takes computing power to be able to process that. So the more you have people interacting with your service, the more you'll need to respond to it. So in terms of infrastructure, that's when there came the need for to scale. There came the need to and then this is where we started seeing the concept of defense in depth. So initially it was not profound. You had a number of layers, not so many layers, but that's where we saw that. And actually to maybe explain it further, that's where we started seeing initiatives such as OWASP, OWASP Top 10 to bring awareness into this.
I see. So, and thanks for that. We started with monolithic.
Yes.
There is now a need to scale very fast.
Yes.
The world is now a global village and need to
Yes.
be able to deploy an application and have it serve clients globally.
Yes.
Where do we get to APIs and microservices? And what's the difference? Are they different? How do they come into the picture at that point? And if you can also blend in that a bit also with how security also changes with the change of that architecture into APIs and microservices.
So I think it's good you're asking that question. So as the world becomes a global village, so to say, people innovating left, right, and center. So the innovation, we needed to lessen the time for innovation. And remember, it is during this time that we had the likes of Google coming into the picture, the likes of AWS introducing their cloud. Could we all mute, please? All right, thank you. So it's at this point where now the kinds of Amazon they come in because we're innovating more. We need to ship an idea, basically a business idea, quickly into a product. All right. So because usually there are competing needs. So business will want you to ship basically a business idea into a product, and then there's also the competing need that you need to do it securely. So the likes of this is where we now started to seeing things to do with containerization. So containerization that catered for the scaling bit. So basically, containerization is a way to package all your application into you're packaging your application and its dependencies into one, and then you're bundling that and you're spinning it up.
Okay.
So yes.
Yeah, sure. Please continue.
And with the rise of containerization, what this meant is that it lessened the need that we had initially of there were a lot of pains with the legacy infrastructure in terms of dependencies, in terms of changes. If let's say we need to introduce a new feature, that had a lot of pain because initially we didn't have ways of tracking dependencies. We didn't have ways of maybe securely updating servers without breaking functionalities. So what happens is that these cloud providers, AWS, Google, what happens is that they come up with this infrastructure that enables you not worry about the server, You don't have to worry about that network. So basically, you don't have to worry about securing that perimeter. You don't have to worry about even at worrying about the perimeter. You don't actually have to worry about in terms of the networking bit, and then they also bring in the additional advantage of a global reach.
Okay. So
Yes.
so at this point, Ayub is saying there is a need for business to scale. And thanks to cloud providers, AWS, who are the first to enter that space, introduce a platform that they take away the headache of you having to deploy the infrastructure, and they
Yes.
do it on your behalf.
Yeah.
And now we begin seeing a lot of applications on the cloud. And of late, we've had a lot of applications integrating with each other through APIs. And a lot of the attacks that we are currently seeing as well are as a result of that window or interface that has been opened up for application A to talk to application B. Attackers are abusing those interfaces. If you can just help us appreciate, this is more of what you do on a daily basis. Your scope is securing applications.
Yes.
Those of us who are developers, those of us who are into the application security side, those of us who are in charge of securing networks and applications, as we think about APIs, what should be some of our focus areas in ensuring that our applications and APIs that we are building are not vulnerable to attacks?
Okay. So how APIs fall into this picture is that and actually nowadays if you listen to people, they keep talking about API driven economies. There's also a term that they will say API fast. So APIs tend to be the glue to first of all, it is a glue to you could have so we are at a point where we are now building very many applications that need to communicate with each other. So that's one use case of APIs. There's also the concept of what I can say is an API-driven economy where we monetizing APIs, and therefore you find that APIs they directly impact, or they represent business logic. All right, so for us to start understanding why this interconnection of services is risky is because it in one way or another, it translates to a business, it addresses a business need. And one of the issues that we've seen, and without going into specific, is that we're starting to build APIs or enabling this interconnectivity left, right, and center without any plan, without any sort of governance, which I will first of all bring in the concept of what you can call API sprawl. So we are coming to a scenario that now we need to interconnect a lot of things. And since we are being forced to innovate faster, since we are being forced to innovate very fast, we are not taking much time into thinking about the design. We are not taking much time to think about the data, to think about security. We are not taking much time to think about life cycle. And I'll start of all, the biggest issue that I've seen personally, even before before you start addressing those small, okay, not small, the issues of that, probably what you will see or publish, you have the issue, you have a lot of APIs that you don't know what it's doing. You have different teams that are developing. left, right, and center, and probably they're churning out half-baked APIs, and that's what you call API sprawl. So APIs are
You say that is API what?
sprawl. API sprawl.
API sprawl. Okay.
Yes.
We are building a vocabulary of terms, Ayub.
Okay. So basically, think of it that you can't secure what you don't know. And if you have 1,000 APIs, you don't know what's running where, you don't know what version it is, you don't know what kind of what it's handling. That becomes an issue. All right. So you could start there and start thinking of the big issues that we don't have API governance. And then from there, you could now start narrowing it down into what into the current themes around APIs, where you have sort of what OWASP says to be the OWASP top 10. I don't think within this session we can dive deep into the OWASP top 10 for APIs. That is probably for those of us who are curious about it. We can surely have a look at it. But we can think about. I'll speak about the biggest issues currently within APIs, which is called broken authentication. So I'll give an analogy of a transport system, public transport system. So within transport system, you do have let's think about that SGR, that train that you need to have a ticket to board it. If you can forge a ticket, or you could be walking and see someone's ticket and then take it and then use it to ride for free. So it means that you basically bypassed the need, you've bypassed that requirement. All right. So that is the biggest issue that we have APIs, is that you have a lot of APIs struggling with and failing to do authentication the proper way. So
I see.
We do have yes, Martin.
All right. And sorry to cut you short, Ayub. I know these sessions for those of us who are joined in, our sessions act as a spark to trigger a conversation, to point us toward the right direction. So far, Ayub has walked us through his journey in tech, how that transition to cybersecurity, experience from a SOC side, the defense side of things, the offensive side of things, the build side of things, the infrastructure engineering side of things, what we call the build, attack, defense pyramid. Very good insights, Ayub, on the journey that we've had from monolithic applications, where we build application, DB, the whole bundle all together. But then with the internet and the demand for very fast response, it changed the architecture of how we are building our applications and the ecosystem. You've walked us through the how applications are integrating with each other and the security gaps there. I have shared a link to what Ayub was walking us through on the OWASP API. OWASP is a framework that focuses on application security. So it's some good reading for those of us who are hearing this for the first time. There's a link on chat that you can read also on the top 10 focus areas that Ayub has talked about. Postman are also a leader on matters application security. Ayub has mentioned about application API governance. I know this forum would not be exhaustive to talk about that in full. So there is a link that you can look at, read more on API governance. Ayub, as we are wrapping up, I want to ask that you respond to a few questions here. There was a question from Angie Angie was actually one of the very first to join our session today. Thank you, Angie, for joining in. Angie asked, what is the difference between containers and the monolithic application? Is it only storage that is the difference?
Okay. So with monolithic, it's not storage. Basically, what I mentioned is that you all have your storage. That's the database. You have your code base there. You have probably what could give a good picture would be an e-commerce system. So an e-commerce system has various within an e-commerce system, you'd have various departments, and all those departments, they have different logic. They have their code base. Probably they have separate DBs. They have separate, data. With a monolithic, you have all of them sitting on one server. It's not that monolithic is bad. It's just that it wouldn't be efficient for that kind of a system. If probably what you are doing is prototyping, is what you're trying to have is a minimum viable product, a monolithic would do. So containers, what you ask is a containerization. So probably the easiest that I can give is sort of a type of virtualization, but think of it like a VirtualBox, VMware. But in this case, is that within a container, it's a virtualization that that uses the underlying hosts in CPU, memory, and like. So a container is a way of bundling your business logic. So for instance, within that example I was giving of an e-commerce system. So what you do is that when it comes to microservices, the best practice is to create services, a service that does one thing and does it well. So you would probably have different business, have different units within this e-commerce system, all of them having their own DB, they have their own logic, their code base is separated. So that's where and all that is bundled within a container that is different, from that is different from any, this other kind of logic.
All right. Thank you very much, Ayub. I also noted there was a response from Boniface. I know Boniface is also an expert on matters, applications, containerization. Thank you for your feedback, Boniface. Ayub, as we are wrapping up, and our apologies, we are out of time, beyond by 5 minutes, but we are wrapping up. There is a question from Velma. And Velma wants to have an understanding of what are the requirements if somebody wants to pursue a career in cloud computing. What would be your recommendation? So as you think through that, there was also a question from Morris Mwenda. Morris was actually my classmate back in university, and glad that you can join us, Morris. Morris asks, does AI revolution have an impact to cyberspace? Definitely, I think this is going to change the way we are approaching security across all our different domains, data, applications, network infrastructure. Unfortunately, it's going to have an impact both from an offensive and for us who are practitioners who are defending networks, in that we need to leverage AI to protect better and faster. And for the attackers as well, they also will leverage AI to attack and bypass the controls you're putting in place in a more effective way. So I hope that I thought I can respond to what Maurice asked. Ayub, what are the takeaways for somebody who is pursuing cloud computing as a career focus area?
So for anyone who would want to pursue that, So first of all, I'd say that it's that kind of infrastructure. It's no different to it's no different. It's only that someone owns probably the hardware bit of it. So the only requirement that literally I would think of is again within cloud you do have the core concepts. The core concepts. Look at it's still the same way you would approach looking at IT. But there are things. There's the why the cloud, and probably that would be a good place. First of all, understand what value does cloud bring, and probably once you understand that cloud, what its value is, and then you could build on that. But the concept in terms of networking, a server is still a server. Things that you need to do to build an application is still the same. But really, what you starting place would be, what's the value proposition for cloud? And understanding that will also help you understand are we does it mean that everyone should go to cloud? Does that mean that cloud is secure by default? Does that mean that cloud is that silver bullet that will solve all issues? So because learning is learning, but start with trying to understand why cloud, what its value proposition.
I see. Okay. So I hope Velma, that answers your question. I know you had also asked on whether somebody who is pursuing a career in, or you want to pursue cloud computing, whether you should start with an Amazon, Azure, understanding those concepts, your GCP.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think adding to what Ayub is giving us guidance on, as much as you want to start with your Azure, with your Amazons, with your GCP, don't forget that cloud transitioned from somewhere, and you want to also understand why are we going cloud? How does networking change in the cloud? How does a server physically, how does it change in the cloud? Why is it cheaper in the cloud? I think the more you focus on core fundamentals, the easier it is for you to understand as technology changes. Remember, Ayub did tell us that technology will change, trends will change. So if you try and run after trends, they will change. What is a hype today, your Python today might not be a Python in a few years to come. So as much as you're understanding the trends, I think one of the my takeaways from your session, Ayub, is focus on the fundamentals and sort of continuously revolve around those key fundamentals. Very interesting takeaway from what you walked us through on APIs, and especially on API security, is that, and as much as from a tech side, we see an API as maybe a line of code, we should not forget that it's actually a business logic that we are exposing. And it might be a business logic that is going to expose medical records. And I think it's important that we think about what our APIs are exposing out there. Some takeaways also, Ayub, from your journey is that there are many things that we could be doing now that are not directly related to what we would call our core career path in cyber. But you have walked us through your journey, and it's been very rich and very broad from your start. And I think you've tried to point us to the direction of build widely as you're starting your career, and then slowly begin to specialize. And that has been very insightful. Do you have any final words for us? Any takeaways, your last words for as you're thinking about security, people who are, those of us who are pursuing careers in cybersecurity? Any final words for us, Ayub?
So maybe I'll say it's sort of an ethos, and probably I've already alluded to it. Taking one thing and understanding it fully. And then there's something also, keep asking myself, what's new? And probably those people who interact with me, I'll come and ask you, what's new? What's different? So even as you're learning, as you're going through your career, you can have that as some of the reflection points. How different am I doing this from what has always been done? What is new? What is different? So that's what I would leave us with. And of course, curiosity. Yeah. In this space, in this security space, things evolve quite fast. But there are, like I said, there are concepts that will traverse technologies. There are those concepts that will traverse time. I think if you build strongly upon that, it doesn't matter if you're on premise, it doesn't matter if you're cloud, it doesn't matter if you're building a monolithic, it doesn't matter if you're accessing a database, it doesn't matter if you're accessing cloud, or probably you're monitoring. There are those concepts that will traverse, and that's what you should strive to build upon, because technologies will change, they will evolve. Probably what looks cool right now, few years down the line, that will totally change. And probably my closing remark will be about the dots again. You can't really connect those dots, looking forward. So something you're doing today might not make sense. You're in security, but you're also fascinated by a bit of dev. You're fascinated by DBs. You're fascinated by AI. You're fascinated by data. Everything is going to be data driven. So it makes sense. And probably sooner or later, that dot will connect you somewhere. So that would be my closing remarks.
All right. Thank you very much, Ayub. It has been very insightful. It's the first time we've gone beyond our time, our 1 hour. And my apologies for going beyond that 1 hour, but we are very grateful for making time for us, sharing your insights. If you don't mind, Ayub, you can also share your contacts that you'd like those of us who've joined in to reach out to you. And we are very excited. A shout out to Samuel Keter. He's joined us today also. I also see him. Samuel was our last guest in our previous webinar. So thank you so much, Ayub. We will appreciate your contacts for those of us who would like to reach out to you and get additional mentorship, if you don't mind. So anyone who would like to reach out to Ayub, please do so as he shares his contacts on email, and we can get more insights from there. Otherwise, we are free to leave at our own pleasure, and do have a lovely evening. Thank you all.
Thank you.
My journey in cyber has rather been an interesting one. And I would say for somebody who's starting a career, we sort of start with some fundamentals, especially in the area of tech. And there are certain fundamentals that are required as you're starting your careers. When I started this journey back in 2014, I did not have these fundamentals. I remember my mentor, my technology mentor, who was my interviewer then, asked me a very basic question, which is, what is a ping command? I could not answer that question. And I want to encourage everyone, if you are starting your tech journey and you think that you're so green, please, I was worse than you. So when I started that journey, it was a journey of learning and getting to know how much information I did not know and how much knowledge I needed to acquire, which I consider important as you're starting your journey in tech or in any other field, because it's important for you to identify and be honest with yourself on what do I know and what are the things I need to learn. Write them down, do your stock taking of your skills if possible. If you find that they are nothing, or rather the skills that you have are very little, that's okay, because that would be your starting point. So that's where my journey started. Started with looking at my peers, my colleagues, and getting to really admire the amount of knowledge that they had, and asking a lot of questions. And that, I think, is how you start your journey of growth and development. So when I started that journey then, it was through learning and getting to ask a lot of questions and getting to getting exposure to a lot of new concepts and new ideas. When you're starting your career, it comes with different milestones. There are different phases of career development. And one of it, your 1 to 2 years of your career will be you trying to find your ground. You trying to find, okay, a programmer, a developer, you're a software engineer, that's a line that you want to take. It's going to take some time to get to the person that you envision in your career path, but you need to start from somewhere. And that was my journey. Within the first year, I could now begin, I could tell that there are things that I could understand, speak confidently, do them as well, because at the end of the day, you need to have things that you can do and match the things that you are saying. When you have a title that you've been given at work, you need to begin reducing the difference between your title and what you can actually do. That was my journey. In the first year, I could tell there are things that I had grasped. There are things that I could do, which give me confidence. In my second year, in my career, more exposure and a very rewarding and encouraging environment that encouraged us to learn and ask questions, even dumb questions, which I have been very privileged to be in such a very good and supportive environment. And we get to talk about this as we continue, because it does shape your career, the environment that you're working with, who are your leaders, your bosses, because they will make or break your career.